FM here, coming to you out of Brooklyn. No King with us in the studio, so we'll have to do it alone this morning. He will be missed until we get him back later on in the week. Hey, today we're talking to Dean Baker. He's an independent economist. So we're talking to him in the first half of the show, and then Rebecca Centeno joins us to talk about an action that happened in Oklahoma that she live streamed this week. All that and a clip from Tom Hartman and some pitching. We're doing some fundraising. It's 80 degrees right now. Stay with us. Hello, New York and the New York surrounding area. I hope you are doing well as we come off the back of this enormous heat wave. I wonder if people are awake and listening. It's so hard to sleep when it's hot, and I hope the lights and the electricity are back on if you experienced an outage. The weather today is going up only to 84 degrees, and it's 80 degrees right now. There's a flash flood watch in effect, and we are expecting severe storms throughout the day, starting at mid-morning for some of the listening area and moving, right through the evening. So it's exactly what you would expect when you're going from record high temperatures to low temperatures. There's always going to be a front moving through, so hopefully everyone will be safe on that front. We have started our pledge drive in for reals now. We're starting our pledge drive here on WWII. Today is the first day of our pledge drive. I was able to talk with Tom Hartman, who obviously has a show here on our that airs on WWII every day. And I was able to catch up with him at Netroots, and we talked about the importance of independent media. Here's Tom.
I'm Juliana Forlano here at Netroots Nation 2019 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm here with show host, beloved show host, I might add, at least for me for sure, Tom Hartman. Tom, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Juliana. It's an honor to be here with you, and I really appreciate the great work you're doing out there on BAI and everywhere else.
Thank you so much, and I feel very much the same way. In fact, your show is what got me excited to do progressive media, and I think it's so necessary in this day and age. Can you talk about where we're at in terms of progressive media, given the fact that so much media is corporate?
Well, what happened in the mid-'80s was that a bunch of very wealthy people who owned a bunch of media kind of came to the conclusion, hey, if we build out a media structure, a corporate conservative media structure network, Romney took it over. You've got now Sinclair. I mean, there's just, place after place after place where we're seeing these happening.
How have the progressives not noticed that this is happening and then started their own? I mean, we're here, there's a media row of progressive people talking, but it's not a Fox News. It's not a Sinclair. We haven't grabbed local markets. Why haven't progressives done this?
Money. And I wrote an op-ed 5-6 months ago to Tom Steyer saying, okay, you're a billionaire. You want to change the political dialogue in the United States? You want to get Trump, kicked out, whatever? It's the wall.
Al Gore used to have Current, right? So what happened with that? Very much the same way. You would think people who have money, who are into the movement, would see that this is very important.
You would think, but the kind of money that went into Current was not the kind of big money. I mean, when Rupert Murdoch started Fox News, he lost $100 million a year for 5 years, according to Brit Hume, who worked there. That's a hell of a lot of money, to be willing to lose. I'm sure the losses went down over that 5-year period, so he probably lost $200-300 million before he started making money. Air America went bankrupt around either $14 or $17 million. That's chump change, right, in the media world. I mean, that's the budget for any one of the shows on MSNBC right now.
That's it. And that is why we're raising money here on WBAI today. $100 million a year Fox lost in order to build their corporate media empire. Lapdogs of the Republicans, lapdogs of power right there. And we're WBAI. We're not going to be lapdogs of power, and we need your support. This is the first day of our fund drive. We've been raising funds and looking for buddies for the last couple of weeks, and we do want to thank those of you who did sign up for Buddies or who did get the ticket premium and that kind of thing. And I really appreciate having Buddies for this specific show and for our network. But right now, we are currently, for the reasons Tom mentioned, raising money. So the pledge line is 516-620-3602, 516-620-3602. If you were stuck in your house this past weekend, maybe in one room, like the room with the air conditioner, 6 people in one room, and if perhaps you listen to WBAI as your entertainment or information, we would appreciate a give back at this point in time so that we can make sure that we can maintain the station. It's 516-620-3602. And if you do that today, because Tom Hartman is so important to both all of Progressive Talk, but, he's really important to me personally. He's one of the reasons why I got into this game. We have his book. He graciously gave us some copies of his book to offer to you as gifts. A $25 gift to WBAI, which, by the way, is it's a low number. We'll take any pledge for above $25. We'll get the copy of Tom's book, Guns and the Second Amendment. This is his latest book. There are 34,000 reasons to read this book. That's the number of gun-related deaths annually in America. And Tom Hartman, who is, the most popular progressive radio host in America and heard right here on WBAI, and a New York Times best-selling author, he looks at the real history of guns in America. The brutal role guns have played in American history, from the genocide of the Native Americans to the enforcement of slavery, to the post-Civil War social order. And also he shows how the NRA and conservative Supreme Court justices used, let's call it specious logic, to invent a virtually unlimited individual right to own guns, which has enabled ever-growing numbers of mass shootings in the United States, and also one-on-one shootings, and also domestic violence. But Hartman also identifies a handful of powerful common sense solutions that could break the power of the gun lobby and restore the understanding of the Second Amendment that the framers of the Constitution intended. This is really a brief, brilliant analysis for which Tom is known. And I do encourage you to pledge today on the first day of our pledge drive. At a gift of $25, we'll get you a copy of this book, 516-620-3602. I'm going to sit here until someone calls in and pledges. I don't have the number with me, but I do have the computer. There you go. There you go. 516-620-3602. 516-620-3602. You can also do this online, as you know. Give the number to WBAI.org. As I suggest, we are going to keep doing our show in the morning, bringing you the news, the weather, everything that's fit to print, the comedy, the King, the Juliana, and even the live stream, which you can find on my YouTube page, as well as a whole bunch of other places. But we do need your support in doing that. I think today you're going to hear across the station a lot of arguments about why independent media needs to be supported by the listeners. $100 million a year Rupert Murdoch sunk in to Fox News in order to gain a foothold. And we've seen how that foothold has played out. It has convinced our otherwise, Democratic working class uncles to vote for Trump, to be Republicans. It's sickening what they have done. And he lost $100 million for 5 years in a row. We're not losing that kind of money, and we're doing the kind of service that people rely on. So we need your help at this moment in time. Our new students, and for $25 today, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment is yours. 516-620-3602. 516, write it down, 620-3602. And then after this pledge drive is over, we're not going to do any pledge driving during our show for a good long while, which is great. You can also become a WBAI buddy, of course, in the name of the show. Again, the pledge, online pledges, give the number to WBAI.org. And now I'm going to bring you some Randy Rainbow. We enjoyed him so much last week. Randy Rainbow is a comedian. He does parody songs about Trump. And we think it's a great way to start a Monday that's full of relief because it's only 80 degrees out right now instead of 1,000,000 degrees. Here we go.
greatest hoax
can be a pain trying
in
to
history.
circumvent.
Yeah.
It's hard
Thank
to
you,
be the fake
Majesty.
president.
Is it true that you threw a
What
tiny baby temper tantrum and
crazy
stormed out of your
sounds
infrastructure
you
meeting after
make?
learning that Nancy
Is it a
Pelosi
substance
accused
that
you
you're
of being,
sniffing?
quote,
Or could it
engaged in
just
a
be
cover-up?
sinus
I don't do
thing?
cover-ups. This meeting was set up a number of
Rosy,
days ago at 11 o'clock.
Nancy
All of a sudden I hear last night they're going to have a meeting right before this meeting to talk about the I word.
Tried to drop Mueller.
what?
The I word.
This was
Impotent?
The I word.
Irrational.
He's got your
Idris Elba?
now and you feel under
impeachment.
attack.
Well,
The whole
Just
thing
keep
with Russia was a hoax.
breathing. You know they might impeach. Keep on breathing. Just keep wheezing, seething, panting, screaming. Your teeth are falling out.
sweetie, you
Keep
seem
your
riled up.
teeth
Would you
in.
like a hard
Presidential
candy or maybe a...
You clown
These people
and
were
mess around, joking
Well,
about
if I may,
subpoenas
Mr.
they
President.
give, invoking so much executive privilege. But now things got you down. Thought that your Fox friends would never cheat. Why they all crushing on Mayor Pete? Girl, they just dissed Donald. Now he's disgruntled. He's breathing like my old man's carburetor. Ill, he cries no fair and claims he's transparent. I guess you could say he's right, cause we see through him every time.
Madam Speaker, dozens of House Democrats, along with multiple legal experts and my Aunt Linda, have found clear grounds for impeachment. Where do you stand?
Breathing. You
How about just
know
for
they might
fun?
impeach. Keep on breathing. Just keep wheezing, seething, panting, screaming. Your teeth are falling out. Keep your teeth in.
Presidential privilege.
You clown. And mess around.
Excuse me.
They say the only way you can reach him is impeach him. Got you down. Thought that your Fox friends would never just impeach him.
Sir, you tweeted a video of Speaker Pelosi which was clearly doctored to make her appear drunk or impaired. Isn't that a cheap shot?
He cries no fair and claims he's transparent. I guess you could say he's right, cause we see through him every time. Just keep tweeting,
Madam Speaker, dozens of House Democrats, along with multiple legal experts and my
I hear a lot of phlegm
clear grounds for
when
impeachment.
he's
Where do
breathing.
you stand?
Oh, I love it. That is Randy Rainbow. He has a YouTube page. You can go check it out. He's about to win an award for his work. I mean, we do need some humor as things progress. Now, joining us today, Dean Baker. The mainstream media today, as we discussed before this break, tend to talk about economic policy, not just other policies, but economic policy from the perspective of those who run it, big corporations and the politicians that they buy. It's often hard to find information that gives us an honest picture of how our economic systems work and who they benefit. Our guest today is trying to give us a more honest picture with his blog, Beat the Press. Great name. Today we're speaking with Dean Baker about a few of his recent posts that help us get to the bottom of what's really in the latest news on the economy. Dean, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Sure, thanks a lot for having me on.
It's just been, I'm just so happy to have you because I've been a long-time reader, first-time booker of you on the show, and I really do appreciate the work that you do. Could you talk a little bit, for people who are just becoming aware of Beat the Press, can you talk about your blog and why you started it, and how do you hope the blog informs our economic policy?
Well, I think economics is an area that actually isn't necessarily that difficult. I think a lot of the policy discussions are actually almost designed to make it difficult, and the idea is that it disempowers people. So people hear this and that about the gross domestic product and monetary policy and various other aspects of economic policy, and they just think, oh, that's way over my head. And I think, as an economist, it's mostly not that difficult. And certainly the job of people in policy positions, and certainly the job of the media, should be to try to inform people about economic issues so that they can understand them. And the blog, more than anything, is about going after reporting. And I'm not looking at, I'm not going to try and pick on some small-town newspapers. I'm looking mostly at the New York Times, Washington Post, National Public Radio, Wall Street Journal, the major news outlets, and saying, here's where your reporting isn't right. You left things out. One of the things I hit on endlessly is the failure to provide context, and just give you a very simple point here. Almost no one, when you hear budget numbers, almost no one has any idea what they mean.
Thank
so
you.
Yeah,
It's
well,
so true. You leave the
true.
news and you're like, I just watched something and I don't know anything more than what I knew when I started watching.
Yeah, one of the points, and you find this endlessly. I don't know how many times I've had arguments with people. They go, "Oh, all our money's going to welfare." And I go, "What's your idea of welfare?" Well, usually their prime welfare program is temporary assistance for needy families. I'd have to check the latest number, but somewhere around $18 billion. So if you go, "Oh, we spend $18 billion a year," well, it's a huge amount of money for you and me and anyone else in the world. But actually, $18 billion a year for the federal government, it's about 0.5% of what the government spends each year. So you go, okay, all these people are cheating, we're going to cut it off, and then you won't even notice it in your tax bill.
Ah.
So the idea that all your tax dollars are going for these poor people that maybe you think it's a waste, maybe you don't like them, whatever, that's just nonsense. And if they just made a point of saying rather than writing down $20 billion, I don't care whether they write that down or not, they made a point of saying, okay, it's 0.5% of what the federal government will spend each year, I think more people would be aware that it's a trivial sum.
Sure. Do you think that the Washington Post caters to the ideas of wealthy people like, its owner, Jeff Bezos, on purpose?
I think what the issue here is, and because, I know a lot of these people, they aren't all, like horrible right-wingers or anything, but it's what do you get in trouble for? So, okay, if Jeff Bezos is the owner of Amazon and the Washington Post, leading stockholder in Amazon's CEO, if you said something that was wrong about Amazon, you get called on the carpet for it. And I actually know this because I remember I once wrote a piece, a column in the Huffington Post, where I actually wasn't wrong. I was talking about how much Amazon had saved as a result of not having to collect state and local sales taxes for, about a decade after it came into existence, even a little longer, until it finally started paying taxes everywhere. It's a very large sum. In fact, it was much larger than Amazon's profits over that period. And Amazon's PR person, they immediately jumped on that, and they said, well, we do collect taxes, which was not the issue. I was saying they had not collected taxes. So even though I was actually right, they made a big point, and the person at the Huffington Post said, well, would you mind a correction or an addendum? I said, okay, you can put down, what's true. I never argued that point.
They're paying it now, but they weren't paying it for 10 years. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but that's just an example that if you say something that's wrong about Amazon, Microsoft, any major company, they will get corrected. So if you're the reporter and you said something that wasn't 100% right in a way that made Microsoft a major company in the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the oil industry, made them look bad, you're going to pay a price. You're going to get called on the carpet. Whereas if you made it look like we're spending a lot more money on poor people, well, I might write about you in my blog.
Yeah.
But you don't have to worry about being called on the carpet for it.
In one of your blog posts, you talk about the way the Washington Post opinion writers criticize progressive Democratic economic policies, particularly the Green New Deal and Medicare for All. Can you talk about what those criticisms tend to be and what they're failing to consider?
Well, they invariably treat these as, far-flung ideas that, oh my God, how are we going to pay for this? These are just harebrained ideas. And, anyone running a campaign, I won't even get details with Donald Trump, but candidates, they routinely say things. They're not well worked out policies. They're not fully formulated. They're guideposts. And this is, I've been following politics for 50 years now almost, and it's always been the case. But they treat something like Medicare for all. Oh, how are we going to do it? Well, it will be hard. But the idea that that's a far-out policy, or the Green New Deal, we're all suffering the consequences. I'm in Utah now, but on the East Coast, you just had this horrible heat wave.
Yeah.
We're all suffering the consequences of climate change. So the idea that you're going to do drastic action to try and address climate change, that would be far out. So they treat these totally dismissively and never look at the counter. What are we doing now? Why isn't it absurd that here it is, we're on a path to basically destroy the planet, and that's a reasonable policy. But taking serious measures to try to reverse that, well, that's just far out. We shouldn't even be talking about it.
In another one of your posts, you talk about how different news outlets will paint the trade deficit with China as either a major factor in the country's power or no big deal. Why do different outlets want to change the weight of the deficit, and how do they manipulate the data to fit their arguments?
Well, in the case of the China trade deficit, I mean, it is kind of striking because first off, it is large, and it's one of these things that Trump was running around the country yelling about China and his campaign, and it was one of the cases where he actually was making, it might be generous to say making some sense, but he was making a valid point that we had lost a lot of jobs, particularly in manufacturing, due to the trade deficit in China in the last decade. And currency, the value of the U.S. currency was front and center of that. Now, back in the last decade, as this was going on, so just to give people a clear time frame, this is, say, 2000 and 2007, our trade deficit was exploding, and I'm picking 2007 deliberately. That was before the economy crashed due to the housing bubble. I was writing on economic policy at the time, writing on the trade deficit, and people were just totally dismissive. Now that Trump has started his trade war, you see a lot of the media outlets are very sympathetic, saying, "Oh yeah, we can't let China keep doing this, and we have to do something." But it's not the manufacturing sector that they're talking about. They're saying, "Oh, we have to worry about intellectual property." Boeing, when they go to China, China makes them share their technology, and I'm going, okay, why would most people in this country, why would American workers be upset that if Boeing goes to China, if they outsource jobs to China, that they'll have to share their technology? So they've totally sort of flipped this, like we're all supposed to, we shouldn't care about all the manufacturing jobs we've lost, and some of which, of course, we're still losing, but we should be concerned that poor Boeing, when they outsource jobs, has to share technology with China. So they've totally flipped this and made it sound like, this is a great national concern that Boeing and other U.S. companies have to share technology with China. Why on earth? Why should you and I, your average person, be upset if our corporations find it more difficult to outsource jobs to China?
Trump is talking about this all the time, and I think he seems to be hiding. It's like a dual rhetoric. He is hiding behind, we're outsourcing to China, letting people jump in and be like, yeah, there goes my job, there goes my cousin's job, there goes my friend's job. But he's really talking about these intellectual property things that he's trying to fix, not the actual jobs.
That's right. And, again, I just see very little interest for most people. Obviously, if you had a lot of stock in Boeing, then you might be concerned, but most of us don't. So, and really, and this is one of the things I've raised this with economists. They look at me kind of blank-faced. You go, okay, if we're thinking about technology and technology flows, China already, its economy is 25% larger than the U.S. economy. By most projections, will be twice the size of the U.S. economy in a decade. They spend as large a share of their GDP on research and development as we do. Should we be concerned that they're going to get our technology, or should we be more concerned, how about we get some of theirs? And being very concrete, there's innovations in health, in medicine.
Dean, I'm sorry, I have to cut us off because we're at the bottom of the segment here, and I did want to get to this last question, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back, and we'll talk about some of these things in more detail, giving our audience an introduction and a brief overview today. But when it comes to the economy, what should media consumers who are not experts be on the lookout for to avoid the traps of writers who are motivated by maintaining a certain status quo that, of course, only benefits some of our more wealthy people and the corporations that they love?
Well, I would say first off, try to just read what's there and don't be scared by really big numbers. And again, I understand everyone's not going to go running to the government data and go, okay, how big is GDP? How big is the government budget? But even if you don't do that, just think, how large is this number relative to something else? So that's first and foremost. But the other thing is who's winning, who's losing. So again, the China case, it's not, if Boeing gets richer, that's not helping most of us. So, when they paint this as U.S. versus China, think who in the U.S. is going to be winning, who's going to be losing.
We're speaking to Dean Baker. He has the Beat the Press blog. I like to let you do the work and then go read the blog because I don't really have time to slog through the numbers. But the Beat the Press blog, and Dean, you are the co-founder of the Center for Economic Policy Research in D.C. In 1999, you did that. And your area of research includes macroeconomics, intellectual property, Social Security, Medicare, European labor markets. And you've also authored a number of books, including Rigged, how globalization and the rules of the modern economy were structured to make the rich richer His his blog, Beat the Press, provide. I was waiting for the second part, the poorer part, but I think that's implied.
That's implied.
Hey, thanks so much for being on the show, and I really do appreciate your time this morning. I hope you'll be able to come back and join us again.
Sure thing. Thanks a lot for having me on.
You're listening to Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano here in the studio with you. It's going up to 84 degrees today, not as brutally hot as it was over the weekend. It's 80 degrees right now. No King in the studio today, just me. And we're doing some fundraising. It is WBAI's Pledge Drive. We are trying to shorten our pledge drives as much as possible. So if you're planning on giving for this pledge drive, we ask that you give at the beginning of the pledge drive, which is today. And, my goal here was to bring on Dean. We have another independent journal. We are talking about listener-sponsored media. Now, where else is there listener-sponsored media? Maybe on the internet. But this is listener-sponsored radio. And the beauty of listener-sponsored radio is we aren't just on your listener-sponsored dials. We are on all the dials. So when people are scanning through their radio dial, as people sometimes do, remember the old cars you had to crank the dial past all the, and be like, and then off to the next one. People can find us these days. I do ask you both to give financially and then also tell people, hey, I'm listening to WBAI. I like this show. I like that show. Have you heard about it? Go to the website. You can listen at any time. You can download. You can say pledge of $25 or more. You become a member, a voting member of WBAI. You get to vote for a number of different things, station board, different measures that we're doing. And you also get this book today from one of our most beloved popular progressive hosts in America. He's the New York Times bestselling author. In this book, he talks about the social cost of guns. This is Tom Hartman's latest book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. It's beautifully written. It's like spending some good time with Tom, getting educated and informed. And, he says in his program, tag you're it. Democracy isn't a spectator sport. And this book on guns, it's a hidden history. We like those things here on WBAI. So time to give. 516-620-3602. 516-620-3602 is our pledge line. 516. And thank you for those people. Oh, I see. Thank you for those people who are giving. And at the $25 level, you become a voting member and you'll get a copy of The Hidden History of Guns. Anything above $25. Now, I know some of you have become WBAI buddies where you give a credit card and you make a monthly contribution in the name of waking up. And I appreciate that so much. That money goes to support the entire station. So we do appreciate that. And it helps us shorten our pledge drives because then we know how much is coming in. It's just like having a regular job where you get a regular paycheck. You know how much you can spend, you can budget, you don't go over budget, that kind of thing. But if you're working, piecemeal like a lot of us are these days, and you pull in this over here and that over there, you just don't know how much you're going to make at the end. So you just don't know how much you can spend, and you have to make decisions that may or may not be in the best interest of your family, and in this case, a listenership. So hopefully we won't have that problem. So becoming a WBAI buddy is our favorite thing to ask you to do. Go to give the number 2 WBAI.org. Give the number 2 WBAI.org and make your pledge today. Thank you so much. Now, instead of our normal bottom, we're a little late on time here, but instead of our normal bottom of the hour music break, we have something very special for you. Raymond Nat Turner is here, the poet, and I would argue revolutionary, the town crier. He's a New York City poet who is read at the Harriet Tubman Centennial Symposium. He's the poet. He's also on the steering committee of the New York chapter of the National Writers Union. Raymond Nat Turner is here to read one of his poems, The Gang of Four. Raymond, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
It's just wonderful to have a live poet on the air.
Okay.
All right. So this, can you give a minute to talk about this poem? It's called Gang of Four. Obviously, the title is related to the 4 representatives who are being attacked by Trump. Talk a little bit about it before you read it.
Oh, well, I think your audience is a very sophisticated audience. They know what's up. They know what time it is. They're woke, as the common phrase goes, and so I would just jump into it. There's a little dictum in writing. This is show, don't tell. So,
all right, do it. We love it.
All right,
thank you.
Gang of four. I say yeah. I say more. I say go. Gang of four. I say yeah. I say more. I say go. Gang of four. Just keep on fighting, ladies. Fight, stay, ladies. We got to run them out. Just keep on fighting, ladies. Fight, stay, ladies. Let me give this shout. Woo! Rock that boat on the Democratic Party plantation. Every state of the union hearing an investigation. Joust with the stupid, ugly, ignorant corporate clown, fancying his weird, absurd, porcupine rug as a crown. Bah! He's mere misdirection, though lewd and loud, for old Pentagon pickpockets working the crowd, bombing babies, locking little children in cages, part of their daily war crimes and weekly outrages. Phew! The rotten smell of festering fascism's funky, riding in bareback and backwards on the donkey. Whipped by Miss Nancy, Captain Stinny, and Uncle Jim. Now, does it smell better because it's branded dim?
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the air and doing it live. Raymond Nat Turner. You can find his poems on the Black Agenda Report, and hopefully we'll have you back again. I really also appreciate you sending me those poems in my email box. I love it.
Oh, for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And have a great show and great week.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And you're listening to Waking Up. I'm Juliana Forlano. We got poetry in the morning, I like to think, a lot of news shows say news, weather, and sports. I'm like, news, weather, and arts. For you on WBAI. Don't forget to support us. 516-620-3602 is the pledge line. It's 81 degrees outside right now. Thank goodness. We do have a flash flood watch in effect for different areas because we are expecting severe thunderstorms to come through today. It's given me the hourly that the storms are going to start, maybe around 2 p.m. for the main portion of the listening area. So be careful for that because there's going to be high wind and potential hail. And if you're watching the news, some guy got hit by lightning on the beach in Florida. I just found this out from my husband, whose grandmother got hit by lightning. Does this happen a lot to people? Tampa is a major place where people get hit by lightning. Isn't that shocking that there is a place where people get hit by lightning a lot? But anyway, stay off the beach if there's a lightning storm. That's all I'm trying to tell you. You're listening to WBAI 99.5 FM here in New York City. And I do have an announcement. Since hundreds of pages of chat transcripts showed Puerto Rican Governor Ricardo Rossello and his close allies and members of his administration, all men, by the way, insulting women and mocking constituents, including the victims of Hurricane Maria. Thank you very much. Hundreds of thousands of outraged Puerto Ricans have taken to the streets calling for his removal. Yesterday, Rossello said that he will not resign, but will not seek re-election or continue as the head of his pro-statehood political party. Protesters said they are not satisfied by Rossello's concessions and have pledged to continue demonstrations that have filled the streets of Old San Juan for more than a week. Alana, will there be any protests here in New York City? Did you see that at anywhere?
I didn't, but I saw that there was one over the weekend that Lin-Manuel Miranda was at.
Ooh! Well, that is fantastic. Oh, goodness gracious. Wonderful. So we'll keep our eyes out for that. I did see that as well on New York One, but I think today is the major action in Puerto Rico. So we'll keep our eyes out for some sister actions here in our fine city. All right. Oh, boy. We have our next guest on. Did you hear about this? Hundreds of people in Lawton, Oklahoma turned out to protest the Trump administration's opening of another concentration camp to incarcerate children at Fort Sill. Now, I think we can put to bed the fact that we can now call them concentration camps because Fort Sill is a former internment camp where during World War II, 700 Japanese Americans were detained and tortured. It's the same location where indigenous people of the Apache Nation were imprisoned and separated from their families, while generations of indigenous youth were forced to assimilate at the fort's boarding school. Fort Sill has a history of white supremacy and has already hurt thousands, and our next guest was there live to cover the protest. Rebecca Centeno is a Mexican-American award-winning documentary filmmaker and activist media maker. Her work has been featured on Democracy Now!, The Washington Post, When They're Being Honest, Now This, Move On, Deep Dish, and act.tv. Her film Earth Speaks about fracking on tribal lands was featured in a number of festivals, including the Red Nation Film Festival and the Santa Fe Film Festival. In 2018, she co-founded Voices Sin Frontiers, a Facebook group that seeks to amplify the voices of asylum seekers traveling across from Central America to seek a better life. She reports on the border and immigration and is based in Texas. Rebecca, thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Thanks, Juliana, for having me.
Can you talk about what is happening at Fort Sill and what you saw this weekend?
Yeah, so Fort Sill is set to open again as a concentration camp for children. As you mentioned, it has a long, dark history of imprisoning both Native Americans and Japanese Americans.
Hi, my name is Victor Romero.
So what happened
I'm
on
here
Saturday,
the Mexico
there was
team,
a protest of probably about 400 and 500 people at Fort Sill, which is an Army post in Lawton, Oklahoma. And the protest was led by a coalition of organizations that were led by immigrant youth, their families, Japanese American, Black, Indigenous, Jewish, and white allies. And the demand that day was to close all of the camps and for the governor of Oklahoma, Kevin Stitt, to not take federal money to imprison migrants at the entrance to Fort Sill.
We have a video
were a couple banner drops.
Oh, say that again?
Yeah.
I didn't.
There were also banner drops from the highway.
And was there a large police presence?
Surprisingly, no. I only saw 2 police cars at the end of the road and then 2 near the banner drop area. And I've thought a lot about this, and I think it's because they're just not used to seeing that kind of action in Lawton, Oklahoma. So the lesson is show up.
Yeah.
Show up in mass protests, especially in places like this, which are, small towns, and I just think that they would have been outnumbered, so they didn't even try.
Also, wasn't it, the fact that so many people came out, and we can put some numbers on it, I think it was hundreds, if I read correctly, in blazing heat to protest this. Can you give a sense of what it was like there on the ground?
It was very, very hot. I think the heat index was over 100, maybe 103. But people were prepared. They had water. They were passing out water. It was very much an atmosphere of love, outrage, of course, but it was very grounded in power and love. And what I saw.
Were there anti-protesters there? You did say to me when we were getting ready to do this interview that someone yelled at you to go back to Mexico.
Yeah, it wasn't at me directly. It was to about maybe 10 of us who were kind of lingering in the area afterwards, and a man drove by on his motorcycle and yelled, "Go back to Mexico." But at the protest itself, there was one
You're like,
person,
I'm from Texas?
Well, another thing is, like, Texas was Mexico.
Yeah, oh, well, maybe he was woke when he drove by.
Possibly.
Probably not.
Probably not. But at the protest itself, there was one person waving around a Trump flag, and there were ACLU around, and people kind of like monitoring him and walking with him to make sure that he didn't cause any trouble, and he didn't. So there was just one counter protester.
Well, it only takes one to be annoying. But so we have a clip of your live coverage. Can you tell us what we're going to be seeing and hearing here?
I think that these are interviews.
Yes.
So the first two are members from United We Dream and the New Mexico Dream Team, and they introduce the action and talk a little bit about the history of Fort Sill and what the demands were for the day. And then the second the third person that we hear is Michael Ishii, and he's one of the organizers of Japanese descent, and he honors Kanisaburo Oshima, who was murdered at the fence at Fort Sill, and I was just so moved by his speech. And at one point he says, "You have seen nothing yet." And so at this point, there were hundreds of people under a bridge that was right before the entrance to Fort Sill, and so people had blocked off traffic. And as I mentioned, it was not a permitted protest. So at this point, we're under an overpass.
Was he saying that you haven't seen anything yet in terms of protest, or you haven't seen anything yet? Okay, good. Because just the fact that the Trump administration is reanimating a former internment camp that was used for the most horrendous things over the course of history, and now it's not like, oh, well, suddenly we're going to use it for education and social betterment. This is really vile and disgusting. At the end of this segment, we're going to give you an action that you can take to help stop this. But let's play that clip that you got, Rebecca. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Victor Romero. I'm here today with the New Mexico Dream Team, which is a branch of United We Dream. So a bunch of folks from all around the Southwest, including Texas, Colorado, came to Fort Sill, Oklahoma today to demand that Congress close the camps. So our immigrant communities that are being detained in these concentration camps are being horribly mistreated. And so we're here asking that Congress close the camps.
As we know, Fort Sill has a long history here in Oklahoma. It used to be a place where Native Americans were held into after the Trail of Tears, and also keeping them as prisoners basically, and also Japanese Americans have also had a long history here, as they were also in detention camps during World War II. And now we're seeing that Fort Sill is going to become a detention center for children of immigrants who are seeking asylum legally into this country and are being separated from their families. But yeah, we're here, we're resilient, and we're here with all the communities here in Oklahoma from all different states. I myself am from Texas. And again, my name was Daniela with United We Dream. And do I add anything else? Yeah. At stake. At stake is the freedom of many people to be taken away, as we've seen historically. And we just want to make sure that every person that comes into this nation is free and is able to seek due process, especially through asylum, as rightfully as they deserve, is a human right. Yeah, we're demanding the governor of Oklahoma to close the camps. We know that he doesn't have a voting record yet to see if he's going to be siding with us yet, but we want to make sure that he closes this camp because it's unethical, and we are demanding the basic human rights for these children.
We're here because we represent voices of outrage in our community and in communities across this country that have historically been targeted by white supremacy and racism. We are here to honor the memory of Kanisaburo Oshima, who was murdered at the fence. Rest in power! We are here to honor Geronimo people who were forcibly removed from their homelands and
from Oklahoma, where if you're just joining us, Lawton, Oklahoma is the home of Fort Sill, a former internment camp that Trump is turning into a present internment camp, shall we say. Now, Rebecca, you went specifically to live stream the event on the ground, which got a lot of traction online, and we are in the course of our fundraising drive for the summer. There were stars with large followings, including George Takei, who retweeted the stream that you live streamed and amplified the voice of the protesters. So for the hundreds of people that were out there, there were hundreds of thousands of people on social media getting this message. Can you give us your impression generally of how important it is that our independent media system back up the voices of the people by showing what's going on the ground?
I think it's critical for independent media groups to show up and to provide this coverage. I can tell you, just in living in Texas in the past few months, how pervasive Fox News in particular is and the narrative of lies and racism that's perpetuated there. On Saturday, I didn't see any mainstream national media present. So I think that it's important for independent media to amplify voices that are often ignored and misrepresented in corporate media. Also, at the same time, I think it's equally important for us to show support of independent media like this show, like WBAI, like Democracy Now!, outlets that don't have corporate interests. I think it's so important for us to support independent media.
Well, thanks for saying that. We didn't, specifically ask you to do that, but I appreciate that. I mean, Fox has a narrative of lies and racism. A guest right before you in the show said that Fox burned $100 million a year when it first started up, just to get a foothold into the minds of otherwise rational people. And now look what they have done. I want to thank you, Rebecca, for being on the program with us. Organizers of this event were asking folks to contact Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt? Is that Stitt, demanding that he stop the collaboration with ICE. There's a hashtag close the camps. You can tweet at GovStitt, STITT. Or you can text close the camps to 877-877. This is important that people all around the country, including here, we have to make this a national issue. This governor needs to know that the nation is watching. This is not a local issue. This ain't about making jobs in his community. This is a national issue. Go to closethecamps.us for more information. We have been speaking with Rebecca Centeno, Mexican-American, award-winning documentary filmmaker, and I would say friend of mine. Thanks for joining us, Rebecca. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, friend.
We are listening to WBAI 99.5 FM. This show is coming at you from the not-so-hot anymore Brooklyn. We're going to try to get Arthur Schwartz on the line. We are squeezing in as much as possible in the last 2 minutes of the show, but I do want to remind you that it is time to support your independent media. The narrative of lies and racism, what a great way to put what's going on Fox News. We are the counter narrative of, I guess, truth and undercover truths, revealing truth, and let's say love and brotherhood. Can we say that? I think we can. So we need your support, and we need your financial support. I hope you will feel moved to provide us, or provide yourself, and provide our community, our whole world, with the financial support that this station needs at this time. The number is 516-620-3602. Arthur, sorry that we're late with the call, but we have so much to pack in, including the pledge drive. But we didn't want to miss out on telling people what is happening on Advocating for Justice. And just FYI, we have about a minute and a half.
Okay, so this afternoon we have Lauren Ashcraft, who is a candidate for Congress in the 12th Congressional District, which is Carolyn Maloney's district. It's an area that includes, it's a very odd district. It starts in Williamsburg, goes to the East Village, up the east side of Manhattan, and then curves over to Astoria and Long Island City.
Yeah.
So in the Queens side, it takes in some of these areas that have been involved in some of the more radical political voting patterns of late, and then it includes the east side of Manhattan. Lauren comes out of that same machine that produced AOC and Tiffany Caban. She's been an active member of that. She's a financial analyst at J.P. Morgan Chase, but she's also a stand-up comic.
What's her name?
Her name is Lauren Ashcraft.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be so fun.
It's going to be a fun hour.
Yeah, well, I'm a stand-up comic, and I also host this political show, so if you like this, you're probably definitely going to like Lauren, and thank you, Arthur, for having her on. That's going to be great. That's our 5 p.m. show, Advocating for Justice, right here on WBAI or WBAI.org. Thank you for listening, and don't forget, now is the time for you to support this station. You can go to give, the number 2, WBAI.org, or 516-620-3602. Today, if you pledge at the $25 level, you will get the gift of becoming a member of WBAI, of this community, of supporting this, of making sure all the information we give out here is available to everyone. And you will also get the book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, by one of our hosts, Tom Hartman. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We will be back I think on Wednesday, but someone going to be here tomorrow. Take care.